It is my distinct privilege this morning to introduce to you a son of this church. It's an honor that we have him here in conjunction with the celebration of our 150th year anniversary. I bring to you to speak to you today about some history and specifically some things that had to do with Pastor Weissling. I bring to you Jim Bowsher. Jim.
Well, Pastor Steve said I can speak for as long as I want. And I could say anything I want. And then I noticed he's not here today. He's a brave guy. You know, when I came here, I see so many ghosts, so many good ghosts. I see, and I have to admit this to you, I loved coming to First English Lutheran, but I was already kind of a vaudeville person myself as a kid, so my real interest was in Harry Shannon, sitting over there, who was in, if people remember Harry, little mustache, he looked just like he should be in vaudeville. And matter of fact, outside this church, Harry Shannon stopped me one day and said, "I heard you at Rotary speaking." I think I was the youngest person to ever speak at Rotary. He said, "I heard you speaking." He said, "I'm going to tell you something. If you do not spend the rest of your life speaking to audiences, you're not going to be happy and you're not going to be fulfilled." He said, "There's an invisible finger out there and it comes around and it floats in the atmosphere and it suddenly comes down on some people's heads and it says you, and the rest of your life you're filled with the blarney." So that's what you're going to hear today, the blarney. The other was Nell Hewing. Remember Nell Hewing? Okay, I was a baseball crazy guy. I loved baseball. Here's what I knew. That woman over there in that pew that I would stare over there, she was married to a baseball player, a Major League Baseball player, one of the greatest pitchers in Cincinnati history, coming from Wapakoneta, Long Bob Ewing, who was probably the first guy, and I never proved it, to invent the spitball. And so this was my thing. So I'm not saying I didn't come here for the church, but these were the people. And I suddenly realized that all the differences of these people, but it didn't matter once they got inside this church. I noticed one mistake, though, as I looked at your program, and I sure Steve, of course, he's off somewhere, is that they decided to have me speak and then collect the offering. This is a mistake. Collect the offering first, and then... I have a temple in my backyard, so everybody wants to know, because there's so many rumors. I mean, my whole life has been rumors. When I went to my first class reunion, when I walked in, I was with my wife, everything got silent. I mean, I was killed in Vietnam. I was never in Vietnam. You name it, I've been that, So all these rumors, and my wife said, "What are you going to say?" Because they're all just waiting. And as I walked towards the mic, it's completely silent, and I got up there, and what can you say? They're all just looking there, and they all have their theories about me. There's probably a lot of money riding on it. So I leaned into the mic, and I said, "Everything you heard about me is true." And then they all turned to each other and said, "I told you." So I guess I became, that thing that I always tell people. I was interviewed not long ago from New York, and I said that moment outside this church right out here. I go out right on the sidewalk and show you where Harry Shannon said that to me. And I always thought I was going to be a speaker, but that's a mentor. He did that to me because he knew that would inspire me. So anyways, back. I built this temple in my backyard, so why did I do it? It's part of the rumor now. I'm going to tell you exactly why I built that temple if you come over to Wood Street and look at it. And it's really symbolized by what happened the day I finished it. This was literally what happened. The kids in the yard are helping me move stone. The reason I let the kids help me build the temple, you know why? They come from homes of dysfunction, where everything they do is wrong. They're being put down. So I knew something. If I let them help me build the temple, I can offset that, because anytime they start to put that kid down, I would tell them, "You can come here someday, see this temple in this yard when it'll be infamous or famous, and you can say, I helped build that." That's our job as adults, really. We hustle kids. We hustle them into believing themselves. I work in juvie centers and prisons, and I'll tell you, that's what it takes. You know why? It isn't society. It's bad parents they've had, everybody telling them the wrong things. And so you have to offset that. So the day that I finished my temple, the little guys are helping me move the stone away. A woman comes in my yard. She said, "Can I read my Bible in your yard? My sister just died." And I said, "Go up on top of the temple. Your message will get there quicker." You know? So she goes up, and 10 minutes, I know this sounds like a joke, but it's absolutely true. And 10 minutes later, a man walks in the yard with a prayer rug, and he's a Middle Eastern man that worked at that time. He was Iranian, and he worked out at the truck stop. And he had his prayer rug, and he said, "You have the only temple in town. It's a holy day. Can I go up there?" I said, "It's getting crowded, but get up there." So he goes up there, you know. Just that. Those kids in my yard, and there is a woman sitting on the one side of the temple reading her Bible, and you have a guy on the other thing facing east bowing towards his. About 15 minutes later, a rabbi that watched me build the thing, I'll never forget, I can't tell you what his language is. I mean, it isn't really bad, but I'm in First English Lutheran, I'll be hit with lightning. But he walked in my backyard one day and said, "What the heck is this place?" And so he became a friend of mine, and he befriended a Methodist minister in Lima, Ohio, and they both pull in to go up on the temple and discuss religion, which they do every week, and they go up there right by me, and it's crowded up there by this time. Here's the point of the story. One of the little guys turns to me and says, "Jim, they're all different religions. What do they have in common?" And I said, "Faith." I said to those kids, and those kids said they never forgot this. I said, "See those people up on my temple? Outside my yard, in that world, they're killing each other. They're fighting each other. But in my yard, on my temple, that ends." That's what that temple's about. So if anybody else tells you any rumors, I mean, some of them are juicy, so I don't mind them. But whatever the thing is, that is the real reason I built that temple. Not long ago, I gave a speech in Florida, and I was invited to, believe it or not, how this thing gets out there. I mean, people just spin me, and then all of a sudden, I get a call, and it's a conservative group of Republicans. Yes, and I'm going to give a speech about the early history in Ohio of the Republican Party, which I know about. I said, "Oh, this is going to be good." I knew one thing. This is, a one-time speech, you know. But I get there, and this incident happens. Guy in the front row has his political pin on, and he has his Christian pin. And I said during my speech, I looked down and I said, "It's real easy for you, like in politics and life. Because all you have to do, if you make any decision politically or personally in your life, you just ask, what would Jesus do?" And this guy goes like this to me. "Well, I don't mix politics and religion." I said, "Well, then ask, what would Lincoln do?" Okay, here's where I think Reverend Nelson might be glad he's not here. It's going to start to get deep here. I love Pastor Weissling, but I always thought, Pastor Weisling's sermon, he stood right here, and I'm sure the people that knew Pastor Weissling, he wasn't the most dynamic guy in the world, but he had a deep faith. But I always thought as a kid matter of fact, I had a kid in the yard the other day said, "Jim, were you on Ritalin?" I said, they didn't have Ritalin back then. They used an elephant tranquilizer gun, Kept me down for about 5 minutes. So as Mrs. Brown knows, when I was in that pew, Reverend Weissling going on, it was something. But I realized that was the price I paid for my sins. 1 hour of Pastor Weissling, and then he'd look at you with that eye, Keep this in mind as I go on here. Well, here's an incident that I actually got a piece of history from Pastor Weissling. And what it was is he told this story. There was a Reverend Culver. Matter of fact, I didn't mention, this is the first place I ever spoke, and I have the lectern. I have the lectern in my house. It was down the basement of this church, and water got in and damaged it, and I repaired it. And Pastor Culver, now think of this, Pastor Culver from right here used to give, and what did he preach to you guys about? No gambling, out. Lottery tickets, devil. No drinking, no dancing. I don't know what it left, It was like... And so you think of that. So people think, oh, those people come back from the past, they'd love to come in the church. No, you guys got lottery tickets in your pocket. You understand? So people say, oh, well, that's a relative thing. Things change. Do they? Yeah. So, I hear this story about Reverend Culver, and what happened was, you know where Eddie White's bike shop was? All the people know, right? Next door to it, there was a trailer kind of thing. There was an open lot. Well, you know what that used to be? Ma McCarty's House of Ill Repute. And when Ma McCarty was ill, Reverend Culver from First English Lutheran was one of the ones that went over there and took her food and medicine. This is a madam. She had a gun strapped to her leg, had 3 girls working there. And one woman said to me one day in the Methodist church, said, well, I don't understand that. How could we have a house of ill repute? Who would go there? Well, I don't know. I don't have a list. But the point is that, so Ma McCarty, and think of that, Reverend Culver, this guy, no gambling, no nothing, prostitution, I mean, the guy goes over there. This is a Christian act. But here's a great thing. They asked Ma McCarty, I know this woman, they asked Ma McCarty, they said, was he the only pastor or minister in town that ever went over there and ministered to you during your illness? She said no, but he was the only one that didn't ask for a discount. There you go. Wherever Pastor Nelson right now, he's starting to get nervous, right? Okay, now you should hide the ears of the kids, because here's the story, and my brother said, you're not going to tell that story. You know I am, Helen, don't you? Here was what we had. I don't know if they still do this, but here's what Pastor Weissling had to do. Number one, the Sunday school class was in the basement in the boiler room. I think Pastor Weissling thought it was as close to hell as you could get. It was hot, you know, and Pastor Weissling standing over you, you know. And so here's what the project was. Now I know this is going to be, I should end with this so I can keep, I've kept my truck running, by the way. All we had to do is we had to write, and you know, and my brother, he came to me, you know, Walt. Walt comes to me, he's real saying, he says, listen, I don't want to be in trouble. It's an easy thing. Everybody has to do it. You simply write about Jesus' birth. Don't be clever. He knew me. Okay, Pastor Weissling, he's kind of scary. So I write about Jesus' birth, the whole thing, the star, the wise men, and the whole thing, and I get done and I read it. See, I'm already a writer and a speaker, and I go, well, he said we could write anything. I thought, well, I won't show it to Reverend Weissling, but I'll just write my own thing out. So I wrote it out, and I'm really excited about it. I thought it was wonderful, you know. I thought it was wonderful right up until the time that I actually handed it in. And it was on I remember it was on an orange piece of paper. And then I knew I had made a huge mistake. I pictured Reverend Weissling reading this thing. I went, oh my gosh. I thought, my only savings thing is I'm sitting down in the boiler room, sweating, and all the kids are there, and I thought, why did I do this? When suddenly Pastor Weissling comes in, and I mean, he's visibly shaken. If you know, you saw him, Pastor Weissling was on that screen. He looks down at me, and he looks at the audience and says, I am going to read somebody's paper, then I'm going to send them home to be properly punished. Here's the story. Kids are going to love it. Joseph is working in the carpenter shop. Mary comes in. Mary said, Joseph, I have to talk to you about something. Joseph says, I told you to never bother me. I thought this was clever. I have to finish this order of crucifixes. And at that point, Reverend Weissling's eye went like this and twitched. Mary says, no, you said if a certain thing would happen, I was to come and talk with you. And Joseph says, you're not. And Mary says, I am. And Joseph says, we'll have to think of some fantastic story to tell your parents. Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I say this in front of fundamentalist audiences, and I still haven't been shot or anything, because I add this line. I'm going to tell you guys this. If your kids come to you and write something like that, can you imagine? I wouldn't be up here speaking. I wouldn't be a writer. If my parents would have been so strict that they... Of course, my mom, I was sent home. Mom cried. Laura cried. And my mom was like Natalie Wood, you know. She was real precious and fragile, and she cried. And then she told my dad to go upstairs and punish me. And my dad marched me upstairs and put a towel even under the door, and I thought, wow, this is going to be brutal. And then my dad started laughing and said, that's the greatest thing I've ever read. Here's the point of this. I want you guys to get this. If you're so strict and you suddenly have a child write something and you think it's blasphemy, kids don't know about blasphemy. They're exerting their own individuality. And I said, I know this. The Jesus that I know would laugh too. That's the point. We damage so many kids because we have these ideas about things, and then they raise their little heads of their individuality and we beat it down. I didn't mean anything nasty or anything about that. There wasn't any blasphemy in my heart. I was an individual, and it led to me having this individuality that you see now and all the rumors are about. Right? Here's my last thing. I know you guys are starting to worry. Oh boy. We're going to miss dinner. The last thing I want to say is my most precious story about Pastor Weissling. Because one day I'm at the table, and I always say this. I say this to fundamentalist audience. I had the perfect parents. Mom was like my brother and I say, my mother gave us so much love, we didn't know we were out of the womb for the first 2 years. Unconditional. Didn't have to go to college, didn't have to do anything, just be you. That's all she wanted from me, just be you. Great. And she was a devout Lutheran here every Sunday in church, and the little thing, sorry, the brass railing's gone. I want to talk about somebody that later, you know. I love the brass railing, it's gone. So she was in the choir and everything, but my dad never went to church. Those are perfect parents, because you rebel to the middle. You understand? Mom was real strict about things and by the book, and Dad, I remember when we left to come, remember in the summer here, no air conditioning? Oh boy, Pastor Weissling, no air conditioning. And I remember on our way out the door, here we are, Mom had us in little zoot suits, you know, just unbelievable. They used to dress you in the 50s. You guys wouldn't believe it today. And so I was leaving the house in one of those outfits, and I remember Dad would turn up the cartoons on TV and say, have a good time, boys. You know, Heckle and Jekyll in the background, you know. But you understand, that gives you, that stabilizes you. Because as I told Pastor Nelson one day, I said, one day I looked at my mother at the thing, and I said, my mom is a really good person, and she's a church-going person. And my dad is equally good, and he doesn't go to church. So you guys figure out what that means. So here's what happens. I asked Dad one day, I said, Pastor Weissling, remember the parsonage house that was next door? Not such a great place. I mean, it looked like the Addams family house, you know. And so Pastor Weissling lived over there in that parsonage house where the library parking lot is. And I'll tell you, if you remember Pastor Weissling, he like had the same pants, and his wife would patch them, and he had that parsonage house with a porch. My dad even went over, the non-churchgoer, went over and repaired the roof for him one time and worked on his car once because his car was always breaking down. Pastor Weissling, this didn't make sense to me. And Mom was on the church board here and was mad one day when she got home, as mad as Mom gets. Divine indignation, we called it. Mom gets home and she says, Pastor Weissling, I'm so angry. He won't take any money because he said it's taken away from the church and what we do in the church. But we want him to buy some new something, whatever. And so I asked my dad after Mom, I said, how come Pastor Weissling lives that way? Now, I'm going to tell you the rest, because and Dad said, go over there and ask him, you know. So I said, I'd go over and ask Pastor Weissling, why? Why wouldn't he take any money? And there's that money. He lives in that house, and he's got an old rundown car, and he's got that clothes. Now I'm going to switch and tell you. I did go over there, and he did give me an answer. Now I'm going to tell you the rest of the story, because I was invited into California, not far from the Crystal Cathedral, to speak to 600 clergymen. And I noticed when I pulled up in my beat-up truck, the church parking lot was filled with Mercedes and all these fine cars. Ooh, religion's good. And I get inside, and I get up at the pulpit, and so I told this story to the point you've heard it, and then I told him the rest of the story. I go over to Pastor Weissling's, and I knock on the porch door, and I mean, literally, there's a hole in the porch floor. And I knock on the door, and Pastor Weissling comes forward like a bad B monster movie, you know. And I said, "Can I talk to you, Pastor Weissling? I have a question to answer." Already I'm starting to get nervous. We go out, and there's a porch swing there, and we sit on the porch swing, and I lean over to Pastor Weissling, and I ask, now picture yourself as the 600 people in the audience. They're all like this, you know, looking at their watch. They want to play golf and stuff like that, you know. So there, you picture yourself as them. And I said, "Pastor Weissling, I have something to ask you. You know, you live in this house," and as I got into it, it got stickier. "You live in this house, your clothes, you got patches, you know. Mom says you don't take any money even for gas and stuff for the car, and you run out of gas sometimes." And I said, "I just got to ask you, why do you live that way?" Pastor Weissling turned to me and said, "When you have Jesus, you don't need anything else." Thank you very much.
Jim, thank you so much. No truer words can be spoken, and boy, I can't follow that up with anything. I really can't. But we will continue with our service at this time, and we'll receive our offering for the day.